Any extreme is dangerous. Meat is secondary protein, it's not primary protein. Our digestive system is the digestive system of a vegetarian.
Be nice not to put on the cake.
But they don't eat a lot of meat. Africans traditionally do not eat a lot of meat. And then when they eat it, it's usually fresh. So it's not a large, meat is not the main entree. A lot of fruits and vegetables, and also then even the herb, then how you prepare it. Herbal combinations that your knowledge of really the biochemistry of diet. You know, we're very ignorant of the biochemistry of eating. So we mix all kind of mess together. But see, traditional people had a very profound understanding of how to mix certain herbs and spices and times of eating and combination of eating, and then still kept them in a certain harmony. The other people, because of migrations and being environmental changes, had to adapt. So you have to look at the specific situation. But in general, humans were not designed to eat meat. But you can, in a balanced situation, you still can eat meat, within the amount you eat, and then the rest of your lifestyle and all this other stuff. All that's a formula. Turn the page to, this is a sheet that says justice. It's out of the dictionary. It's out of this dictionary here. Dictionary of All Scriptures and Myths by Gaskill. Basically talks about justice. It says justice, a symbol of balanced conditions of progress on different planes in relation to karmic law. Again, pick up on the key words and help you decipher what they're talking about. It says a symbol. First of all, it's a symbol. You know, justice is a symbol of something. So to say we gave you justice don't mean nothing. Because to say justice is a symbol, it don't mean nothing. The symbol is supposed to represent an actual experience. That's the only time it becomes real. That's why people who go through initiation, like in Masonry, they go through these symbols. Because they have these symbols, they feel that they know something. It's not the symbols that give you the knowledge. It's not a diploma, it's not the rings on your finger. They're supposed to actually represent the experience you really went through. That's the only thing that makes the symbol real, is the experience that the symbol represents. Is not the symbol itself. What's happening now, people now accept the symbol as being reality. That's why somebody can get tricked. I give you a nice hat or a coat or something, you know, with some symbols on it. You think you all that. And that ain't even what it's about. That's why in reality, you don't have to have no symbol on if you went through the experience. You become the symbol. So it says, justice, a symbol of balanced conditions. So we go all the way back here to the scales, balance. Of progress on different planes. So when we talk about different planes, what should come to your mind relative to this session? Say what? Right. Relative to this class, we say different planes, sevenfold constitution should come to your mind. Right. So okay, yes, there are different planes. What's those planes? What are those sevenfold constitutions? What's those planes? Come on, the brains is popping, throw some stuff out. You throw one thing out, it'll trigger somebody else's thinking. Sevenfold. What?
Subconscious.
Nah, that ain't it.
Physical.
Oh yeah, that's it. That's part of it.
Pre-conscious or subconscious or unconscious?
Physical, lower
Higher
mental.
consciousness. Right.
Yeah.
Higher consciousness. I ain't looking for that either.
Higher
We put that
mental,
on there.
wisdom, love,
We put it on there. Okay. So what are they? You said, somebody said what? Higher conscious? Somebody else say what? Don't let this, don't get locked in. Let your mind flow. So what comes to your mind?
The unconscious.
The unconscious. Unconscious. That's why it's what you hold in memory. And see, in the presentation, there's certain ideas that I dwell on. That's the key. That'd be like the key. That's the important pieces that you need to hold. Because if you hold those key pieces, the other pieces fit together. If you miss those pieces, the other stuff becomes fragmented, and it's difficult for you to contain. So sevenfold, just think, well, what's you go from lower to higher, higher to lower. What's the highest level? Superconscious, on the conscious thing, okay. Superconscious. What's the lowest level? Physical. Right, that's what I want to get.
lower mental. It's going up.
It's going up. You got physical,
Lower mental. No,
emotional is right here.
Emotional.
The physical is composed of two components. You have the physical, but then the physical is based upon what? I just said it a few minutes ago. The what? No, I just said it a few minutes ago. I just said it a few minutes ago.
Just this thing?
I said everything physical is based on something energetic. Energy is etheric. Everything physical is a reflection of an energetic or an energy pattern. The thing that gives your body its form, its shape, is there is an energy pattern that makes the matter conform. It conforms. It's a pattern. That's energetic. It's energy. It's a frequency. It's a vibration. So everything physical has an energetic counterpart. That energetic, and that means everything physical has an energetic counterpart, and the universe is made of energy. So that means that by touching anything, you connect to everything else from its energetic part. That's why magic can work. You got physical, etheric, emotional,
Lower mental.
lower mental, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. I help you.
Higher mental.
6, 7, right. Higher mental.
Like wisdom, love, or something like that. If I can remember right. Intuition.
Right. And divine. Sevenfold constitution, and those relate to other systems of thinking, right? Unconscious, personal conscious, self-conscious, higher mind, superconscious. But basically it's physical, and the physical has two levels. The physical and the etheric. They're both, you can't separate the two. Then you have emotional, lower mental. So in one sense it's 4, but it's also 3. So in one sense, it represents a 4, but also represents a 3. And this is the bridge, or the abyss. And so then you have the higher mental, the intuition, and the divine, which is 3, which is that. trine. So on one level, if you have 4 and 3, you actually have a pyramid. You also, if you take the 4 and you drop the 3, you have the Masonic apron. If you have the 2 triangles, if you combine together, Star of David or the Seal of Solomon. So we could go on talking about 4s and 3s. So we talked about different planets we got on there, talking about the different planes. What I'm trying to show you, because we're, like next session is like the summary of all of them. We're already moving into that. In terms of, a part of it is not just to talk about the virtues, but it's also to start talking about a way of thinking. Because all the stuff is interrelated. It's about synthesis, it's all interrelated. It's not separate, everything is interrelated. Like all the virtues is really not hierarchical, they're all interrelated, like a net, as opposed to being one on top of the other. And so it's like trying to, and then the other thing is the key word, there's certain key words. We talked about Star of David, we talked about higher self, lower serpent, higher serpent. We talk about the cross, right? The cross is what? It's 4, is the cross. So when Jesus died on the cross, he died to the lower self. And he arose, was resurrected. So he arose, so where he arose or ascended, that's going up. Was up to higher mind. And at the highest level, the divine, or superconscious, cosmic conscious. So, but it's really simple. If you can just get the basic point, it's really 7 points. And if you can get that basic pattern, when you start reading and hearing this stuff, you can see, well, what they talking about. Well, they, double crowns. What's a double crown? You got Upper and Lower Egypt. Upper and lower. Right, high and low. So they unite the 2 together. So that means you whole now. Both your lower self and higher self are merged together in one. Talk about Moses raising the serpent up in the air or the sky and part the waters. That then freed or liberated the captives. What was the serpent in you? The words that come to your mind.
Kundalini?
Right. So if he raised it up, well, how when you raise the serpent up, when you raise the Kundalini up, where does it go? Because what other 7 things are in you? Relative to Kundalini. If you say Kundalini and 7, certain should automatically come to your mind. Kundalini and 7, which should come to your mind?
Chakras.
Right. So then once you see Kundalini and chakra, then raising the serpent up, where is it going?
The crown.
To the crown chakra. And you're back at the crown. Upper and lower Egypt, Pharaoh. Where's the crown? He's the king. And on the crown was a serpent. On the forehead, which is what? What's the chakra at the forehead? It's called what? Third eye. So then you got third eye of Haru. And Haru is the son of Isis and Osiris, which is higher and lower, spirit and matter, which is divine consciousness or consciousness. You know what I'm saying? See, it ain't but one story. All the different symbols and images are nothing but one story because it ain't but one truth. So once you get them basic patterns, you can see. And the basic patterns is reflected every day because high and low is based upon midnight and high noon. You know what I'm saying? See, it ain't but one story because it ain't but one truth. So once you get them basic patterns, you can see. And the basic patterns is reflected every day because high and low is based upon midnight and high noon. That's your basic symbol, which is winter solstice and summer solstice, which can be birth and death. Fundamental. So when it goes down, it's death. When it rises up, it's life. So when we talk about Kundalini, we say when you go down, it goes down to the bottomless pit. When you rise it up, it goes to the king's chamber or to the capstone. It's all the same. So, I triggered that saying when we talked about here, a symbol of balanced condition of progress on different planes in relation to karmic law. Now we're on karma. It says, and these people, but it's good to read this stuff too, because these people start, they got a different way of talking, but they be saying the same thing. So as you become familiar with people talking different ways, and see how it's the same thing as said, it enables you then to be able to decipher the different stuff people talk about and say, oh yeah, they all talking about the same stuff. So it says here, but he answered and said to one of them, friend, I do thee no good. Didst now thou agree with me for a penny? Take up that which is thine and go thy way. It is my will to give unto this last, even as unto thee. Is it not lawful for me to do what I will with mine own? Or is thine eye evil, because I am good? So the last shall be first, and the first last. Matthew 20:13-6. Now the decipher says, the higher self disciplines the qualities and chides their rebellious murmurings, and points out that no injustice has been done, saying that as qualities have sown, so have they reaped. It is the will of the Logos, the Word, or the divine law, that perfect fairness shall be meted out. He lives in all, and all is but his own. That's the same thing as me saying that everything is based upon the energy is in all things. So we all exist. Everything is connected. Everything is really one. So it says, he asked if there be imperfection. He asked if there be imperfection in the lower nature, and whether, if so, it is not an imperfect mirror or reflector of his divine nature. For it is necessary that the first in order of evolution of qualities become last in progression, whilst the last take the cheapest place. The first that are evolved are full of the desired nature, while the last are more advanced and are reincarnated later in the cycle. We'll talk about that in a minute. Remember last week we talked about the serpents, and the serpent represented something. We talked about Lucifer, right? What do we talk about the serpent representing?
Good and bad.
Yeah. Well, see, I'm answering that relative to it says, the first that are evolved are full of the desired nature, while the last are more advanced and are reincarnated later in the cycle. We talked about reincarnation too, didn't we? In terms of people coming back. Did we talk about that? I had someone to talk to you about that stuff, but
The fallen angel. Devil the devil.
yeah. Okay, let's deal with this. Involution and evolution. Right? Let's go. It's all up here. We can talk about it. That's it. Here's one right here. talked about all this stuff already. No, not that. Where is that? Where is that? Well, it says the first will be last and the last will be first. So if you go on the sevenfold constitution of humans, the first was the divine, because we evolved out of the divine, down, and we became more and more dense. So then this is the first, this is the last.
You say dense.
Dense.
What you mean dense?
Material. Right? And we talked about how everything came from light. If you want to get some good insight on that, there's a book called Reflective Universe by Arthur Young. He's a physicist and he's also a technologist who then got involved in higher states of consciousness. And there's a whole school of Europeans that came out of the 60s, and some of them got involved in all mind-altering drugs and the hippie movement and the peace movement and the black conscious movement, and they shifted in terms of how they thought, and they started to do research, and they got involved with Eastern meditational techniques from the East, and started to do comparative study between quantum physics and consciousness. And the thing that's going down in quantum physics in terms of how light can be waves and particles. So if you look at individuals in one state, we get this all merged together in another state, and how just how it operates, I want to do that in terms of just how the consciousness of the observer affects what is observed, which then meant that where your consciousness is will also determine what you get from your observations, because you're biased based upon your consciousness. So then if you don't understand the reference point of the thinking of the observer, you won't really understand, you won't understand the relativity of what they observe, because everything observable is relative. I want to keep going there, right? But that book gets into that. Also, if you get the Tao of Physics by, what's that? What's that guy?
Check to get a new relativity.
Not Newton's relativity. Because Newton's thing is a more mechanistic view, mechanical view. They're moving to Einsteinian, in terms of quantum, and then how everything is relative, that was the first image. Everything is relative. The ultimate relativity is the universal, which is very difficult for consciousness can't be there. So everything else is usually relative to some reference point. So when Phoebe brings out the timeline, when you're talking about something, it's related to something. Christianity and Crusades are related to a time. Islam is related to a time. Kemetic is related to a time and a space pattern. Time, space, pattern equals consciousness. So if you want to deal with a certain reality, a certain thinking, look at the time, space, pattern that produced that. So even in terms of African traditional religions, the specific pattern of that religion is a reflection of a time, space. Because if you go to another time, another space, you'll get a different type of pattern, externally. And then we can recycle right back around to the thinking of the lower mind, and just focus on the external fact. So externally, your shirt is different from his. So I can say you're different from him, externally. But then if I look at it dialectically, I'm going to say, well, what is the purpose of the shirt? What is the reason for the shirt? Well, you're trying to put something on to keep yourself covered, or to keep yourself warm, or whatever. Then as I do that, I will start seeing more commonality or similarities than differences. when I was talking about higher, first, and last, what I was trying to get to is first we came down, involuted. This is the first, which will become the last. Right. Which is Alpha and Omega. Because it's really involution, evolution. So the beginning becomes the end. So that which was first becomes last. And then you can relate that back to the Bible. It says what? You have to be as children to enter the kingdom of heaven. And then if you go back to the symbolism of youth or children or elemental, right? Instinctual or just natural. Then adults become conditioned. Individualized, conditioned, self-conscious. And so then back to cosmic, you then move back to instinctual, but you become conscious. Because latent extrasensory perception is an inherent instinctual quality that you have. But your body is always telling you stuff. Like right now, your DNA is actually a gyroscope that if you were sensitive enough could tell you where you are in the cosmos. Because it's orientated to the universal. You can sit down and meditate on the motion of the stars. And if you go into your lucid mind, you would be able to perceive things greater than the naked eye can see. Because you would start to tune in to your universal aspect of you that's related to that aspect of it. And then you could know things. You could know relationship between things. Because the same principles that operate out there operate in you. I'm just saying all that to say, turn the connection between the instinctual that becomes conscious. Cosmic consciousness is just making that which is natural conscious. When they talk about the masters that make their heart stop or breathing go down, they can lie without food or be buried or they do all these things. That's just a external reflection of their mastery of their own elements in themselves. That ain't the object of it. But the point I'm saying, those things now operate unconsciously or your autonomous nervous system. But you have a capacity to consciously manipulate those things. And I'm just getting back to the whole point of how we move, the first will be last and last will be first. Just trying to show how it's all related to the same pattern. That's what they're trying to show you. If you take this pattern, you can start using this pattern as a reference guide to decipher these various symbols and scriptures and all these kinds of things. That's like I did.
What you saying? You consciously make your nervous system.
You make your heart stop down. You can make your body speed up. You can consciously create or heal yourself. Because energy, thought is energy. And the universe is made of energy. But it's not just the thought. Like if I say the divine, depending upon how deep your understanding is of the divine, we'll talk about how deep and intense the amount of energy is generated by you thinking of the divine. That's why rituals become more powerful when people understand what the symbols represent and not just going through the symbols themselves. You can follow what I'm saying? Because your mind has unlimited capacity. So the only thing that limits you is your own thinking or your own thoughts. So then how deep is your thinking? The deeper the thinking, the more intense the energy. That's why if you really get deep, that's why telepathy and also, what's the one where you move stuff with your mind? Huh?
That's telekinesis.
Telekinesis. All you're doing is concentrating thought, which is energy. Because most humans think so superficially, your thought is wimp, it ain't strong. But once you really start to get deeper into your own mind, then you generate more electromagnetic frequency, and that's volume, that's force. So it actually occupies space. And you can make phenomena, things happen. You can make things hot, you can make things cold with your thinking. But not superficial thinking. But then you can make yourself become hot or cold. That's why you can go out in the freezing and they can just go into the zone and they don't freeze. Or people can be out in the hot and just keep their body temperature cool.
Or heal themselves.
Right. Or take poisons that could kill a normal person, but they can actually counter the chemistry of that poison. Because there's now, everything in your body, is biochemical electromagnetic. And everything has an antidote. So anyway, I'm just bringing that point up to talk about, when I say thoughts or thinking, is then how deep is your thinking. What is it here? Yeah, this was good. It says, necessary replies or returns which a man's surroundings make to what he is and done. But what measure you met, it shall be measured to you again. It is a law of vast extent and wonderful exactness. The world is far more orderly than we believe. A deeper and truer justice runs through it than we imagine. We all go about calling ourselves victims, discoursing on the cruel world, and wondering that it should treat us so, when really we are only meeting the rebound of our own lives. What we have been to things about us has made it necessary that they should be this to us. As we have given ourselves to them, so they have given themselves to us. This is the law I want to trace with you, only begging you to keep your minds clear of any materialism, which would think that in mere earth itself resides this power of just and discriminating reply. It is as we and all things exist together in the great embracing and pervading element of God, that all things give themselves to us as we give ourselves to them. So all the phenomena of life are at the same time divine judgments, if we are only wise enough to read them. Which also means, if we understand that a part of the present condition is a part of the whole process of moving from the new or the zero to full potentiality, that everything that is occurring along this continuum is a part of a whole story and not separate. And because we have a tendency to view things from a very small fraction of time, we become very reactionary in our understanding. And although our conscious mind does not want to relinquish the need or desire to return in kind when we feel we are receiving, it then retards our freedom and liberation. I'm not talking about forgetting. I'm just talking about elevating and understanding that everything is one, including white people, including animals, birds, trees, stars, all that is a part of the one. And has a part to play in elevating consciousness. So the question is, what is the lesson to be learned in the experience and not the experience itself? Because until you get the lesson of the experience, you then will repeat it.
Did you see on the news where they have an estimate where they can trace the beginning of a star, its history when it actually exploded and formed? The pattern, it says it throws off gases which, pass through time and they go back to the beginning. And the pattern looks something like that. That's what made me think.
It's one Maya. The whole universe rests on Maya. Take me to the next page. Obedience. In the handout, I'm gonna skip over some of this stuff. That's in there. We'll skip over that. Oh wow. Okay. This thing here came out all blurry, but I made up some more copies. We went over this. You can spread these around. This deals with the issue of absolute justice and karma. I think we've talked about this though. I know we have. We talked about freedom from resentment under the experience of persecution. We talked about this. In terms of the thing I just talked about, in terms of what I would read is, this comes out of occult philosophy. They have a section in occult philosophy that deals with the 7 basic truths. And the 7 basic truths deal with basic concepts that if you can't really accept these concepts, you really won't ever be able to really gain an in-depth understanding of metaphysical concepts, metaphysical principles, in terms of acceptance of miracles, and superphysical reality, initiation, absolute justice, repeated opportunity. I think there's 1 or 2 more. Although we've covered them, we just may have given them the same titles. This talks about absolute justice. What I do is I pull out stuff off the key words, so you can see how those key ideas reflect themselves in different systems, in different philosophical, spiritual, religious systems. But how, in the essence of them, they're talking about the same thing. Hopefully, when you look at it like 10 different ways, you can see the same thing. Then hopefully, the same thing will stay with you. But that's the point. All the other stuff is just different clothes. So it says the 6th of the basic truth in the lesser mysteries is an affirmation of karma. So that means that absolute justice and karma are same. And that just come off of what I just read in terms of how you treat things is how things treat you. It's not how things treat you. It's the way you treat things. You see, some people respond in the opposite way. They treat things the way they treat them. The way things treat them, they treat the thing. But see, that's the test. Because 2 things is going on, right? We said how individual consciousness or personal consciousness reflects cosmic consciousness or universal consciousness. But if you're responding off of specific things, that's relative, not absolute. So the only way you can understand that relative experience is to see the phase that is in within the continuum. If you just take it for itself, you're going to be out of sync. Because that's relative. That's not universal. You follow what I'm saying? And that's in personal relationships. When somebody has come off with you on a crazy tip, You got to see what is the continuum of this act here to really understand why they're doing what they're doing. It may not have anything to do with you. But if you just take it as face value, you're going to be all bent out of shape. And the other part of it is what lesson is it bringing you, because everything is bringing you a lesson. If you didn't have lessons to learn, you would be. Just the fact that you're here is saying that you still got stuff to learn. And so life is presenting you with tests to see if you learned the lesson or not. And just like in school, if you flunk a test, you got to take it again. And you get mad and do whatever you want to do, but so what? To go to the next thing, you still got to come through that. And this stuff, I had this conversation with my daughter about selfishness. And as we talk about selfishness, she's constantly, I'm telling her the act is an inappropriate act. And then in justification for the act, she then starts talking about how other people have done those acts and how other people have acted toward her. I'm saying that's another story. Because that doesn't change the fact that the act in itself wasn't appropriate. If you take some trash out and sit it on the kitchen floor and walk by it for 2 days, that's inappropriate. Now, just because you got an attitude because somebody might have used some of yours and didn't do, all that is something else. But the act itself was inappropriate. So the issue, if you say you're trying to be appropriate, then you're appropriate regardless of the inappropriateness of others. That's when you're following my eye. Because it's individual consciousness and universal consciousness, not individual conscious to individual conscious. That's what's got us all out of whack now. Yeah. And that's why they say the ultimate is there is no intermediary between you and the divine. Where when Christianity came in the Nicene councils, they took out two major elements. What were the two major elements they took out?
Karma and reincarnation.
Karma and reincarnation. And if you really reflect and meditate on karma and reincarnation, you can see why a predatory, materialistic statecraft had to take that out.
Chad.
It becomes very clear. Because then you could not justify be going around here destroying, killing, stealing, taking from other people. Because you would know by your teachings that whatever you give out, you're going to give back. And then they got us now all twisted up in their hatred and evil and negativity that we are like lost. That's why virtue is to the soul and justice is to the state.
Bring it back around.
Right. So here it says, the fundamentally Oriental, that's the East, that's us, idea in dramatizing the relatively in dramatizing the irrevocable consequence. Oh, this was the sheet I just passed out. Okay. Top of the paragraph. Talks about, okay. It says this fundamentally Oriental idea. So keyword here, fundamentally Oriental idea. We're at the East. So that means it's a fundamental African idea. In dramatizing the relatively irrevocable, means you can't take it back, consequence of personal act or attitude. places an important emphasis on two things: the potentials of control in destiny. So karma, absolute justice, is directly related to the potential to control your own destiny. And two, the complementary recognition of an inherent individual competency, which means that you also have an inherent, I mean inborn competency. Says the concept of karma through recent centuries, so you talk about the European thinking, has dominated classical physics and is accompanied medieval rationalism, appearing as limitation rather than opportunity. See where the focus got reversed? Now they think about it as a limitation as opposed to an opportunity. And that phenomena are the faithful expression of their own prevailing milieu or environment. So they're saying that the phenomena, things that occur, are the faithful expression. Faithful expression is another word for what? Faithful expression. Faithful expression. It's one of the virtues. We're talking about it tonight. Something faithfully expressing. We was talking about it tonight. Expression, expressing, faithfully. I talked about it, somebody else talked about it. Production of sound. And what's a sound? It's an expression of a vibration. And then when we talked about fidelity, we were talking about the individual reflecting the higher. Faithful expression. You faithfully expressing your higher self is the true fidelity. Right. So then the question is, do you hear your higher self? And you do, but many times you don't pay no attention to it. And then once you become aware that it does exist and of its expressions, then do you faithfully express it? Because some of us do hear it, but we don't want to express it because it might put us into conflict with our own thinking, or what we're comfortable with, other people, whatever. So it says, experience may be subject to an intelligent or ordered direction of greater ultimate purpose. You can see a lot of the virtues right here. We talked about, I think we talked about order, systematic. Here it's talking about direction. We're talking about intelligent, intelling. He's saying of greater ultimate purpose. Ultimate purpose. Right. Sonum bonum. Intelling or ordered direction. Ordered is talking about initiation. You know, so once you become more knowledgeable and aware of these ideas, but you got to turn them around in your mind. You got to play with them. Then when you start reading things, the metaphysics of what they're talking about can become very clear to you. What it's really talking about. So it says, experience may be subject to an intelligent or ordered direction of greater ultimate purpose than the mere repetitive consequences of participation in the immediate complex. So that's the same thing I was saying. Everything is a lesson. If you don't recognize it as a lesson, as you engage in it and things are happening to you, you don't pick it up. You don't see there's an ultimate purpose, there's a greater purpose of what's going on. Then you're just going over the same thing every day. So and that goes back up to the irrevocable consequences of personal act or attitude. So as you are operating in your day, where is your attitude at? That's going to condition how you interact or understand what's going on. That's why we keep, if you can keep keep your consciousness at a higher level, that's why I tell people, are you conscious that right now you're spinning around in space, traveling through the universe right now? I mean, is your mind, if you can keep your consciousness hooked at that level, the things that happen in your day, you put in a different perspective. And they take on a total different light. The same thing. Your day can totally change. Do you know where you are in time and space? We have this changing period now, moving from this heavy individualized self-consciousness, now moving toward the synthesis and cosmic consciousness. So that that's the direction we're moving in. If you're aware of or conscious where we are in this phase, then you're going to relate everything to that direction, as opposed to then still reacting off of the past thing. Same experience will have a totally different orientation, a totally different effect. What's the key word? I analyze and I serve. So it says, the purpose of mere repetition of participating in the immediate complex. However, although conformity to pertinent conditions is the very essence of integrity. What's the key word here? Although conformity to pertinent conditions is the very essence of integrity. Right. Pertinent. So then, pertinent is relative to something. And back up here, the greater ultimate purpose. So then your adaptation or conformity to your immediate situation at the highest level will be relative to ultimate purpose, as opposed to the immediate stuff that people want you to conform to. That's what the whole thing they talk about with people who march to a different beat. A lot of people who create innovation and are the future heroes during their time, people thought they was crazy, that they was tripping, they didn't know what they was doing. Because everybody else was locked in to this certain way of being and thinking, which was kind of conforming to the immediate environment. And they, for whatever reason, well, it's karmic and, what their attitude was, they saw something else and conformed to that. And then created a doorway for people to then go to someplace else. So if people always conform to the immediate environment, things are just cycle within themselves. You just become stagnant. And a part of that happened relative to certain tribal conditions in Africa. Because a part of a lot of the early tribal environments or village clan environments was exact replication of what our ancestors did. And after a certain phase of time, that behavior became obsolete. So then the universal order would then bring about change. And although externally we may consider it as being very destructive, but usually relative to the fixity of a condition, then equates the level of destructiveness, external destructiveness that has to occur to create or alter that condition. And if you look at all the different clans on the globe, and that still exist today, you have a great level of separatism that exists. And if the ultimate purpose is synthesis, then the universe will call into being the conditions that will bring the resolution of the situation. And so that's what my thing is that African American people are the seed for the synthesis of the globe. Because we are the synthesis. All the races are in us. If we just looked at the conditions of who we are, it would define what our role is. If we could look at it in a greater context and not just in the physical events that created the condition. And not to say that they're justified or you should allow it to happen, none of that. But it's just like earthquakes and hurricanes and all these other things that physically cause destruction, but there is a greater cosmic order because everything operates under the context of Maya. So, it says, because people can run one course inevitably in the ordinary pattern of their being, they may run another with equal fidelity in the extraordinary case. So it's always two paths, right? We go right back to the higher and the lower. The lower mind is going to be the physical facts. This person looks like this. I'm in this condition. Oh, this is that. Or you can go to another level. So it says, they may change what is destined for them by their attitude and connection with it. And the major problem that we're having, especially among black youth, is that our attitude has become identified with so-called ghetto culture. To where to get out of the situation, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's why they pump, a lot of the hip-hop stuff. Like, you don't hardly see none of the conscious rap no more. X-Clan and what's happened to Public Enemy, what happened to all them?
That's shoved to the side.
And the thing that really lets us know how dead we are, there is no outcry to bring them back or to where they at. I mean, where's the popular demand to say, hey, what's up with that?
Well, there is the outcry, but the outcry is nullified by lack of resistance and will to carry it through.
Mm-hmm. But, so, it says, they may change what is destined for them by the attitude and connection with it. This is the insight which has established the ethics of a balanced obligation. Another key word here, right? Balance. Mm-hmm. Obligation from the very beginning of human consciousness. Building upon the reflex impulse to equate injury with payment in kind, which is what we talked about, right? And recoiling from the notion of penalties in excess of damage. The great spiritual teachers have pressed on to the vision of forgiveness and even actual love for an enemy, thus capitalizing on evil constructively by removing the center of relationship to the invisible aspects for mastering rather than suffering events. You understand what they're talking about?
We got lost in the middle of that.
It says, building upon the impulse to equate injury with payment in kind.
Or that's retribution.
Right. But it says, building upon the reflex impulse to equate injury with payment in kind, the recoiling from the notion of penalty in excess of damage. The great spiritual teachers have pressed on, they went beyond that, to the vision of forgiveness and even actual love for an enemy, thus capitalizing on evil constructively by removing the center of relationship to the invisible aspects for mastering rather than suffering events. Basically what it says, you come up to me and slap me upside my head. My immediate response is I want to slap you back upside your head. And usually I want to slap you twice as hard as you slap me because you made me mad too.
7 times.
Now, spiritual master, and I'm going to deal on the second half of that too, the second half of that, is the spiritual master will not slap you back. they will take the natural impulse to do that and capitalize on it. Because karmically, if I then initiated a negative act, then eventually it's going to come back to me too. Even if a negative act was given to me, because that negative act is also an expression of something in a continuum. So then the act of me getting hit is not the cause, it's an effect of something. And so by me just going back and reacting off an effect, I won't really deal with the cause. Yeah.
Can you understand how some of us would have a problem with that?
Oh, definitely. Every time we talk about this, it's a major. You talk about turning the cheek. That's why I said the other side of it is, on a higher level, a spiritual master would already see you coming with a slap.
On a higher level.
Right. Which means then they wouldn't even be close enough for you to slap.
Properly speaking.
Or they would be so sensitive that when you slapped them, they move with the slap. And although you slapped them, it didn't hurt them. Or another level, they could, be on Aikido and Jiu-Jitsu and stuff like that, but they would just redirect your attempt to slap them and neutralize energy. I'm not saying to let people beat you down.
Or steal your spiritual
Right.
masters from you.
Right. Because the energy is to balance it out, but you don't do it with hate, is what the mastery is. Like my instructor used to tell me, if I have to go to battle, have fun. Don't do it out of hate, because if you do it out of hate, then it's going to, first of all, you end up going overboard or doing something you don't have to do, plus you're not as effective. And so what I'm trying to say is that it's not just sit here and let somebody slap you upside the head or take your stuff and beat you down or anything about that. But the issue is, one, first of all, if you really raise your level of consciousness, you'll see it coming before it gets to you, and you can deal with it. The other one is, the act itself is not the true cause, it is an effect. And if you really want to deal with it, you need to change the cause to neutralize the effects. That's what I'm saying. Now, think that with African American people. We get, our educational system is all jacked up, our employment conditions are this, so then we have a tendency, well, these people are doing this stuff to us. So then our immediate reaction is want to go do something back to them. That's an effect of something, it's not the cause of something. If we truly understand, we have to raise to a higher level, which means we need to then get in front of the stuff. That means if our education is not right, then we need to create education that is. As opposed to trying to get somebody else or fight somebody to stop doing what they're doing, we need to move to a higher level. Because it says a level, to change reality, you have to change consciousness. And to change the level of consciousness can only come from a higher level of consciousness. So if we say that, that go back to dialectical. If we look at how are we being oppressed, then if we want to change that, we got to go to the higher level. The problem with it is it takes a systematic, discipline, and ordered approach, which our emotional self, the lower self down here, the emotional body won't allow us to do it because we're still reacting to the feelings and the lower level thoughts.
I have a question on for example, we're talking about karma and the fact that what you do will come back to you later.
Right.
So, by you learning from your experiences, when it comes back to you on a negative level, you may have learned how to redirect that energy.
Right.
So that's the key to it.
Right. Because karma basically means action. So it's based upon your actions. Because for your actions, there'll be a reaction. So then if you're tired of your present actions, you need to change your present actions, and your future actions will be different. It's really simple. I mean, it's simple to talk about, but it's not easy. because the environment keeps triggering reactions, and if people have not been initiated into a higher consciousness, they keep responding at the lower level, at the lower mind, which is physical, energetic, because energetic is even energy-wise, because black people need a certain kind of energy. And so if you can't find it naturally, then you will find it artificially. So there's a great attraction to these altered states, and then emotionally and mentally. So, it says the seeker is expected to clear their own karmic involvements by disassociating themselves from all trivial or outworn compulsions. And to realign, here we go, realign, that's a Mayatian term, realign themselves continually with new responsibilities in their invisible fellowship. As a sixth step toward the greater mystery, you consecrate yourself to some spiritual service of self-sacrifice in the everyday working world. And by your consequent crucifixion in society, you become a true group spirit.
Can be done without any crucifixion?
Well, the real crucifixion, the real crucifixion is that you are no longer held by the lower mind. That means
the crucifixion isn't that opposition that rises from amidst the muck to jump in front of you and try and block your progressive action?
Sure it is.
Because it rises out of the muck.
That's right.
When you're trying
to call it forward. Because when you move to make a positive move, you're going to call in the negative. But if you're focused and centered in your positive, you will neutralize the negative. It's only by you then starting to engage in the negative that you then come off your center and allow the negative to knock you off. But it's going to be automatic. You're going to call the opposite into reality, but that's the test. That's the test.
If I could just give a specific example of this, some people know that I've been doing a lot of work for the community, self-sacrificing work. It was unusual. I walked into the Good Life restaurant less than a week ago, and I was feeling as if the work that I've been doing is starting to find appreciation at a very, very high level. And it's, maybe the only reward one gets for doing this kind of work at this period is a lot of people embracing you and saying, we appreciate what you're doing. And as I was selfishly putting all of these warm embraces in my basket, filling my basket up and saying, well, this is the reward, I got to the end of the room and an elder says, you ain't no good. You're a liar. Your word is mud. Your word is dirt. You just ain't no good. You're get on out of my face. And I was kind of stunned because everyone around him had all been like filling my basket up. And so out of deference to an elder, I did not say anything in disrespect. I did say, well, can you tell me what my offense was? He was, you didn't send me page 2 of that report you said you were going to send me. He was serious. He called me all these names. And rather than get excited, jump into the fray, into the argument, I say, well, of all my offenses, I have learned to defer to an elder. So I will just bow my head and defer to you and say that you are an elder and I will not say anything in hostility. And he still threw some more duty at me. I didn't know what he was talking about. I didn't know. I didn't know which report it was. He wouldn't tell me. So I think that experience validates this. But it's unusual. It just seems, it's just a rude surprise that the more you do self-sacrifice and do what could be qualified to be good work, is that this thing will grow on its own, and it will seek you out and find you.
But it's testing you, because you're not doing it. It's good to get that, but that's not the real reason why you're doing it. And so,
Right.
although you're down the road, you do need that, because you're still human, but the ultimate is not to get caught up into that. Because
Right.
then once you do get caught up into that, then you're gonna start deviating, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's also a test.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, I did see him again, and he didn't throw any more duty at me. I didn't know which report he was talking about.
Let's see, that's about, we're almost wrapping up here. Let's go to the last sheets. This comes out of the Kabbalistical Tarot, the textbook of metaphysical philosophy. And of course, a lot of the stuff in terms of the tarot cards and all that, you know, that's a whole other thing. I just, again, they have some key points in here, so I want to bring out. So we go to page 191, second page in there, on the last paragraph. It says, the activity of justice, this is on the one with the tarot cards on the top of the page. Probably next, the third, fourth page in the back. This one right here. The last paragraph says, the activity of justice is at work continuously in the above and below, in the greater universe and in the individual soul. Taking to the most mundane, as we drive a vehicle down the road, justice is our correcting of the wheel back and forth in either direction to keep the vehicle centered. Such a purposeful equilibrating function occurs in our bodies, where nutriment must be balanced and continual to keep them operating as proper repositories for the spirit. I'm talking about you taking in foods in which we eat, how to throw stuff off. And an equilibrating function occurs in our personalities, where no constant extreme of behavior can be tolerated if we are to operate effectively in our environment. That means you can't always be super happy, and you shouldn't be all super sad. The ultimate is to maintain a balance and be positive every day as best as you can. Because you know if you start getting real super happy and all this, then it's going to have to be balanced off with depression. That's why a lot of artists and creative people really go through these super highs and these super lows, you know. And a lot of people that went into, you know, suicide and drugs and all kind of stuff trying to maintain that super high. You can't maintain that super high. You can go up, they call them peak experiences, but you have to come back down and exist in the mundane, but carry that with you to sustain you, but not want to be at this super high all the time. That's not the normal way. But people not knowing this, that's how people like to stay on the drugs. They want to stay high. And you can't stay high. You're just going to burn you out. And so that's why they get on that roller coaster ride. And so it says, so temperance, you know, maintaining that balance. Justice works both through reason and through natural force. We may decide to bring something of ourselves into balance, but we do not make that decision, it will be made for us. If we deprive our bodies of sleep, we will find ourselves forced to rest. We may simply collapse. The same process occurs at all levels of justice, through the four worlds. We may make a conscious decision, or we may be made, or be made for us. In any event, this intelligence is faithful. It guides and protects us. You got that key word again, faithful. That means that there's a reflection of a higher energy. It's always going on. then it talks about adjustment,
Yeah, excuse me,
Okay.
is this Crowley that is being mentioned?
Okay, Crowley is Aleister Crowley.
The one who brought Satanism into the 20th century? Yes, the same man.
He's supposed to have brought Satan. Well, if you really study Crowley, you'll understand that it's not Satanism. If you study Crowley, you know that what he's talking about is not Satanism. He uses a lot of, first of all, he's a European. And so the way Europeans relate to a lot of these mystical teachings becomes perverted or twisted. It can go to extremes.
This is the same Aleister Crowley, the teacher of Anton LaVey, Michael Aquino, L. Ron Hubbard.
I believe so. I believe so. I'm not sure. I studied more from the metaphysical. I was introduced to Crowley because some of his work he had documented certain metaphysical traditions. It was through him I went and picked up those metaphysical traditions. I didn't get off into his thing.
Maybe I'll submit a chapter or two from one of my reports. I think you find very interesting.
Oh, okay, no problem. I mean, he got stuff on barbarous words and drugs and sex but see, the thing is, if a person is not well versed in the symbolism, they will take it literal. He talks about the beast and harlots and whores and all. They did all kind of crazy stuff with excrement.
He was also the teacher of the Beatles. And not directly, but it was his philosophy. The album cover, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, the photograph that appeared is entitled They Like We, and has all these characters, of which Aleister Crowley is one. And all of those people were satanic initiates on that album cover.
Well, we could get into a discussion, but it won't be here. Because again, it's the literal interpretation of symbolism. Just like Christians took witchcraft and all these things as being literal and went out and burnt and killed and hanged and did all kinds of things under this guise. But if you understand what it really meant, it didn't mean that. So in that context, I would say sure, they probably, they probably are. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on. Because he brought a lot of stuff with witchcraft and a lot of so-called satanic rituals. But what does Satan really represent? See?
Ultimate evil.
No, that ain't what it represents. Right. Lucifer is the temptation to become more conscious.
Of course, there's a distinction between Lucifer and Satanism.
Well, even Satan, we can get into this. Satan goes back to Saturn. Saturn is the tester, the taskmaster. But he's also time and material structure, but he's also pain, misery, frustration, melancholia, limitation, loss, all these things are dual. And so then depending upon to me, Europeans are trapped because of the pineal gland, the cavalcation of the pineal gland. But then shuts the doorway for them to literally experience the invisible or the divine. And so they have a tendency then to focus on the material or the literal things and then go all off on these tangents. So anyway, but again, I haven't made an in-depth study of
and I think
students of Crowley in terms of all the other guys.
I think that the first two sentences of that paragraph kind of lead you where Crowley wants you to go.
Right, talking about this is the path where whatever is necessary is done to bring the organism into equilibrium.
A process
which, as the symbol of the sword suggests, is not always pleasant. This is the sword of Dembrebrah, which cuts away all that is unnecessary, the extraneous dead wood of nature. It is a severe experience, though no punishment is implicit. There is no question of good, bad, right, or wrong. So it's true, they can take that. They say there's no question of good, bad, right, or wrong.
So therefore, a Satanist, according to the definition that I have utilized, the Satanist is one who sees the ultimate practice of what is regarded by the common society as evil as a form of communion or a holy type of practice.
So basically,
Ritual communion.
they just flip to the other side.
Correct.
The point to remember in all this is that all the God forms are aspects of the soul itself and not external agencies. So they go off and get involved in the external attributes as opposed to dealing with the aspects of their own soul. Thus the process may be considered psychologically as a condition of self-assessment. The soul weighs itself on the scales in the left hand and then makes necessary adjustments, wielding the sword in the right. One will observe that when the sephiroth are placed in the human body, Dembrebrah on the right hand and Cheetah on the left. We talk about these two sephiroth. But the point here is what does a sword represent psychologically? What does the sword represent psychologically?
That was penetrate.
That which can what?
Penetrate.
Yeah, but in terms of psychologically, what does it represent?
Painful correction.
That's a consequence. The sword, the will represents. The sword represents the will. It's your will that implements or cuts or destroys. It's through your will that you cut away what is not necessary, or that you enforce things psychologically. It's the will. Just like when they knight you, it's a symbol of the will of the hierarch, or really the higher mind. The king who wears the crown is knighting the so-called one who is virtuous and makes them a knight, or one of the brotherhood, or the fellowship. Again, they're acting out metaphysical principles, and they just dramatize it. That's where ritual came from. Ritual is the dramatization of universal principles. So it becomes a psychological event that then creates a feeling that the participant experiences. It's not just intellectual. So that's how you can create ritual. It's what is the principles you're trying to dramatize. What is the occasion? What's the occasion? And then if you are somewhat versed in understanding the correlation between colors and emotions and thought and sound and emotions and feelings and certain herbs, and then you create a pageantry or a occasion using those various symbols or implements that represent a theme. And that's how rituals are created. These original. Each implement had a psychological, energetic correspondence to the significance of the ritual.
What is meant by the statement up on the top is talking about the process that occurs through all levels of adjustments through the four worlds. What's the four worlds?
Four worlds is, what are the four worlds? What do you think? Yeah, that's it.
What, fire, water, earth?
It's the four elements. Yeah, the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual. Four worlds. And they also have archetypal, creative, formative, and then the physical. So the archetypal world is the prime idea, right? Then you have to create. Then off the prime idea is a creation, because the archetype has many expressions. So based upon the situation, you create off of that, and then you got to form it, and And once you formalize it, then you have to make it material. And that's the process of how creation occurs. It comes from the fire, archetypal, air, mental, water, formative, physical, earth, yeah, manifest. And so the tree of life is broken down into four divisions. That's the four worlds. The tetragrammaton, Yad, He, Vadi, the four syllables of God that makes up creation. It's really related to the four elements, or those four realms of existence and being. And then you have those four worlds in you. You got the fire, the earth, the water, and the air. And the human is related to your intuitive, your emotional, your mental, and your physical. Microcosm, macrocosm. We talk about the greater universe and then the individual. So we made it in the image of God. And if you go down here, at some underline, it says, second paragraph at the bottom, says this guy also teaches the third paragraph says, pursuant to the idea of incarnation and reincarnation, this card is said to represent karma, a principle generally understood as a reaping by a newborn soul of what it has sown in past life. Paul Case, however, insisting that the term has often been misunderstood, stating that what karma really means is action. This is an action which is a continuous adjustment. Same difference. He also describes this key as related to education, insofar as Lamed, which is the Hebraic word, which means to teach. This is especially interesting observation not found elsewhere. The conscious maintenance of balance is definitely a learned experience. So it just reinforces all we've already said. We learn often slowly and painfully how to analyze and rebalance ourselves as necessary for different situations. The more we learn of the inner worlds, the more subtle and difficult this becomes. Perfect balance is a formula so precise that the Egyptians symbolized its delicacy as the human soul weighed against a feather. These ancients had a concept of right, truth, law, and rectitude expressed by a single word, Ma'at. This originally meant that which is straight. We come all the way back around. As I said when we first started talking, keep that in mind, right? And here it is. This originally meant that which is straight, but came to mean also a rule, a measure of some kind, or a law. Ma'at was symbolized by the feather against which either the heart of the deceased or his whole body was weighed. In illustration, we find this weighing administered by Anubis, and the results recorded by Thoth. Blah, 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 blah. Jump down, it says, the next paragraph, as a goddess, Ma'at represented moral law and truth. She was, in essence, the personification of the concept of Ma'at. Then he talks about the cars and all that. Go down to the next paragraph toward the bottom. It says, Ma'at relates to the sun god Ra. She is in fact known as the daughter of Ra, as she is Kabbalistically named the daughter of the Lords of Truth. The Egyptians also called her Queen of Heaven. Most important is that Ma'at is the regulator of the path of the sun. The Egyptian text suggests that it is through Ma'at that the sun subsists, for Ra is said to rest upon Ma'at and to live by Ma'at. So basically Ma'at is universal law, which the sun follows. The sun rests upon Ma'at because the sun rests upon universal law. So again, it shows you how the mythology personifies cosmic principles. And on the next page, in the first paragraph, that's where I got it said, it talked about Venus. And he can talk about Venus and Mars. I'm not good at it, but the point is says that Venus is the only planet which symbol encompasses every single sephiroth on the tree of life. See figure 14. The implication being that love is the ultimate power of the universe. And that's what I want to rest on. That's what I talked about. If love is not under the foundation of the establishment of relationships, then the relationships can become perverted. And I would say, go see Frankenstein. You ever seen the Frankenstein movie, the latest Frankenstein movie? You know, that movie is really a metaphor for what is happening to the dispossessed people in the world today. Because people are being conditioned by the ruling class, experimenting around and for creating monsters on the outside in terms of how people perceive people as being ugly, negative, bad, or whatever, when inside they're human beings with a heart. Because they are human beings inside with a heart who desire to be loved and cared for, when they then do not receive love, they engage rage. And there's one which is the most profound moment of the whole film. Frankenstein the monster confronts Dr. Frankenstein and tells him he wants Frankenstein to make him a mate. And if he makes him a mate, he'll take his mate way up in the north, which is interesting, and never be seen again. And Frankenstein told him he couldn't do it. And so the monster tells him, he says, there's two things in me. One is love, one is rage. He says, if I can't have love fulfilled, I will entertain my rage. And I will kill everything that you love. And that is the essence of the situation that we are in today. Because we was in a meeting with one of the Native Americans, and they said in our language, we don't have the same meaning for love, like this romantic love. For us, love means to care for, which means the absence of caring for then enlists rage. That's what's going on. On that note, I'll bring it to a close. So next week, we're going to do a summary of all the 10 virtues. We've already started, the last 2 we've already started engaging in it. So next week, we're going to do a summary of all 10 virtues. Then I'm taking a break. Then we're going to have something else like
That moves coming to African origins of Christianity.
Right.
Probably like 3 lecture series.
Probably that. I'm
trying to pull up on the
You're kind of talk. Because I'm going to start doing, then I'm going into the 7 of arts and sciences. Will be the next step. And then we're going to go through, I'm going to have monthly sessions on each one. We'll do a month on astronomy, a month on sacred geometry, a month on number, arithmetic, a month on music, on grammar, on rhetoric, and on logic. So you're talking about roughly 7 months, probably a year. But it'll be fun, you know. And that's only still superficial. You know, you still within a month can only get still some introduction to a lot of stuff. Each one of those is